My mother was a witness to one such gruesome murder. Then very close to us, there was a Sikh temple, Chemi Badshai, which was set on fire and the people inside were all burned to death.
Or the incident in Bengal after the
Yes,
direct
that-
action day.
just remember,
Yeah.
on the 15th of August, he was not in Delhi for the celebrations, but sitting with Soharwardi, the chief minister of United Bengal, because there was
And a lieutenant of Jinnah.
Yeah, and a lieutenant of Jinnah, because there was a story going around that Muslim locality is going to be attacked by Hindus. And he said that if they come, they should kill me first. Nehru government assured that Muslims were not attacked. There were some attacks here and there, but the state intervened and smashed them. The slaughter of Muslims on a larger scale was possible in the princely states like Patiala and all, where the officialdom was not connected, whereas in the rest of Punjab, the police officers, the deputy commissioners, they had all served together. So there was a restraining hand.
Good evening, listeners. This is Ali Wasi from New Wave History, and tonight again we have Dr. Ishtiyaq Ahmed, who is Professor Emeritus at Stockholm University, one of the most important public intellectuals. He's a political scientist. He has written many books, and today we are going to discuss with him his seminal work, in true sense of the word, Punjab, Bloodied, Partitioned and Cleansed, which was published by Oxford University in Pakistan. And Dr. Saab, thank you for coming, and thank you for taking the time out to discuss your book with us. So first of all, I would like to know what went through your mind when you conceived the idea of writing this book.
You see, I grew up on Temple Road, Lahore,
Right.
and some of the incidents in 1947 took place on Temple Road,
Right.
and my mother was a witness to one such gruesome murder. Then very close to us, there was a Sikh temple,
Right.
Chemi Badshai, which was set on fire and the people inside were all burned to death. So these stories, as I grew up, I heard them many times, and even about people who took part in the assault and so on. So this was an idea which I always had, that I wanted to find out exactly what had happened. Then the case of Yugoslavia, I was living there and it took place in front of our eyes.
Right.
And the killing and the dislocation and the ethnic cleansing.
You were in Yugoslavia at that time?
No, I was in Stockholm.
Okay.
But I mean, it was happening in front of our eyes.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
day on television,
Yes.
we were seeing this. So then I got the feeling that it was my duty to find out what transpired in the Punjab in 1947. I applied for a grant claiming there that if we don't do it now, it will never be done,
Right.
because that generation will go away.
Yes.
And the Swedish Research Academy was very kind and granted me generously a 3 years grant. At that time, things were not so bad. I was a Swedish citizen, and the Indians did not mind me going there on a tourist visa.
Right.
I informed them that I wanted to go and talk to people. And of course, coming to Pakistan was no issue for me. So now when you enter the field, normally you look at the existing literature.
Yeah.
The existing literature almost entirely was about studies based on the reports of the Punjab governors or the chief ministers,
Right.
which ended on the 14th of August.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened subsequently? No great work explained to us the events. On the other hand, we had Banto telling us about the horrors of the partition, Krishan Chandra,
Ashfaq Ahmed has
Ashfaq Ahmed, even Qudratullah Shahab's
Yes.
story, his
Ya
best
Khuda,
story is
etc.
on this. And then Rajinder Singh Bedi. So everybody was talking about the partition. But academically, not much had been done.
Most of these were fiction writers.
Fiction writers. So what was there in fiction must be reflecting the events.
Yes.
How to find out the truth. So let me say that some Indian feminists had done pilot studies of women uprooted in partition based in Delhi and so on.
Right.
So they had done what we call oral histories. So if on the 14th of August official documents are missing, there are some bibliographies and maybe newspaper reporting, how do we tell the story of the people affected by the partition?
Yes.
So I then embarked upon an ambitious plan to cover the whole of Punjab, not just a handful of uprooted women. And so for 3 years, I conducted these field research, recording the interviews, sometimes even the pictures which are given in the book. And so it took me 11 years to actually have enough material to present a chronological event of what happened, how and where and why. So that's what the book is. And about 90 to 95% of those interviews are available in the public. LUMS, Lahore University of Management Sciences, they have a website, Partition Archives,
Right.
where they have very kindly uploaded all those interviews. So people who want to listen directly to the interviews can always go there. In the book, I've given all the details. So I had, being a political scientist, I just didn't want to describe the situation. I wanted to explain it as well. So I had to generate a political theory, which I've called a theory of ethnic cleansing. And I had to present conceptual clarity. What is the difference between genocide and ethnic cleansing? Very often they are used as synonyms.
Interchangeable.
Interchangeables. But I made a distinction that genocide is when you have enough reason to believe that the intention is to destroy a people. Whereas ethnic cleansing is that you want to purify a region of unwanted minorities. So killing them only takes place if they are not running away. But the intention is not to destroy them as a people. And what happened in the Punjab, I think, would be more ethnic cleansing.
Right.
Because there were 6 million Muslims in East Punjab. By 31st December 1947, only about 80,000 were left in a tiny princely state called Malerkotla. Elsewhere, they were killed or they had to run. In our part of West Punjab, there were 5.5 million Hindus and Sikhs. And not a trace was left by 31st December 1947. But on both sides, the communities driven out or whatever survived largely.
Yes.
So I said, if I were to choose, what happened in Punjab was ethnic cleansing.
Right.
So that, I think, is an important distinction.
This is groundbreaking in many ways, sir, because what we see is that, for example, I myself from an Urdu-speaking family who hail from New Delhi Delhi. And then there were my maternal grandfather, Sayyid Qasim Mahmood, has written extensively on his own experiences coming from India to Pakistan,
Absolutely.
from Kharkhoda, etc. But he or other people who have written mostly in Pakistan, because it was also a state building project, and there were people who were actually who had been displaced from India and they had come to Pakistan.
Absolutely.
So we have grown up listening to and reading the stories of Muslims who had come to Pakistan from India, and they had the gruesome stories to tell. But very few people have actually discussed the stories that took place here, and the victims were Hindus and Sikhs.
This is done in this book.
Yes. Yeah.
For once, everybody has been given a chance to tell their story. And I keep on receiving messages from people that, sir, unless we read your name, it's impossible to say if a Muslim has written it or a Hindu or a Sikh. So I think that's a great compliment.
Yeah.
I've done justice to everyone, presented their trauma, as well as pointed out people who, even at that point, went out of the way to help the other side, even without knowing who they are, just as human beings.
Yeah.
So I say that in my book, the fiction of Manto is there, the stark realism, as well as the humanism of Krishna Chandra. Because human beings ultimately
Are emotional beings.
can be placed along this polar extreme.
Yeah.
So that's the great merit of the book.
And because you just mentioned it, because I skipped that part, because I was talking about the horrors that took place in this part of Punjab, because against Hindus and Sikhs.
That's
but
right.
there were horrors that were committed on the other side of Punjab against the Muslims. And I
Can
remember
I give
reading.
an example?
Yeah.
There are 3 examples of what happened in Delhi. One is by Dr. Ishtiaq Hussain Qureshi, who became the Federal Education Minister in the Federal Cabinet, as well as Vice Chancellor of Karachi University. He says that the Muslims of Delhi didn't know what to do when they began to be attacked. So many of them took refuge in the in around the tomb of Humayun. If you have been to Delhi, it's worth going and seeing it.
I wish
So it's a large court where people could, the field is open. And he says that yani Ishtiaq Hussain Qureshi and Dr. Zakir Hussain, who later on became President of India, we wanted some help. And we went to Gandhiji and said, Gandhiji, please help us. The Muslims are facing virtual annihilation. So Gandhiji said, well, I'll do my best. And Ishtiaq Hussain Qureshi, a die-hard Muslim leaguer, writes that after that, those Muslims who wanted to migrate to Pakistan could do it in peace, and those who wanted to stay there could stay in India. Gandhi must have kept his word, because otherwise they would not have killed him. This is Ishtiaq Hussain Qureshi, a die-hard Muslim leaguer, telling me. Then we have the example of Shorish Kashmiri. He gives another angle. He says that, in the INA there was one Shahnawaz, Major Shahnawaz. Major Shahnawaz was very close to, he was working with Gandhiji during this attacks in Delhi. And he says Gandhi once again came to this Humayun's, tomb, and the Muslims fell at his feet. And Gandhiji said that please rise up. Muslims do not bow before anyone except Allah. And they said only you can help us. And he says the same, that all those Muslims then could live in peace, either to decide to remain in India or come to Pakistan. And then I have a third story added in the Urdu edition of where there is a gentleman, Zafar Ahmed, lives in Karachi. He says, I was 2.5 years old and we were all there in this Humayun tomb.
Right.
And my mother was carrying me. We were scared to death. And then Gandhiji came, and then peace descended on us. And he says that one man achieved what the whole police corps and the army could not. So all these 3 examples are in my book, and the most reliable of all would be Ishtiaq Hussain Qureshi.
Obviously.
So
A die-hard Muslim leaguer.
So
and
that's
part
how-
of the
yeah.
real state building project. Yeah, and your stories relating to Gandhiji, and this is something I remember. I read a fictional work by Deepa Mehta, Water, and in which she describes in an ashram. She discusses how Gandhiji came to the city during his train yatra, and there is an ashram where widows are living. And one of the widows goes to him and says that, don't we have the right to live like normal citizens? And he says that nobody can stop you. And with one giant hand, he pulled women out of misery that they had been facing for centuries,
That's
for
correct.
millennia.
That's correct.
Similarly, this incident, or the incident in Bengal after the
Yes,
direct
that-
action day.
just remember,
Yeah,
on the 15th of August, he was not in Delhi for the celebrations, but sitting with Soharwardi,
Yes.
the Chief Minister of United Bengal, because there was
And a lieutenant of Jinnah.
and a lieutenant of Jinnah, because there was a story going around that the Muslim locality is going to be attacked by Hindus. And he said that if they come, they should kill me first. And if you have seen the Gandhi film, it is true, because I heard Abdur Rahman Saab, a very old man, I met him in 2009 in Calcutta. He says this is true, that when the Hindus came to kill the Muslims, Gandhi ji confronted them. And he said, "Okay, you kill me first before you kill these Muslims." And there was a man who said, "You know, they killed my son. I want revenge." And Gandhi ji said, "This is how you should do it. Adopt a Muslim boy whose parents have been killed. Raise him as a Muslim. And that's how you will serve your soul." So all this is on record.
He was, in true sense of the word,
A saint.
a saint. But at the same time, you mentioned some of the stories that you've written about the Muslims that survived, but also there were horrors that were committed. For example, I
yes.
remember reading a book by, it was a fictional work, Amritsar Ki Yaadein, by Hamid Akhtar and A. Hamid. And he wrote about how, and then when Zahid Chaudhry notes in in his book Tanaza, Punjabi Mahajir Tanaza, Tazad Ka Aghaz, and which he says, which is the beginning of the conflict between Punjabis and Muhajirs in Pakistan. So he also writes about this policy in Pakistan where Muslims coming from India, and especially Punjabis, were not given the kind of treatment that they deserved, and preferential treatment was given to the Urdu-speaking people, Muslims who had come from India.
That's
by
correct.
Liaquat Ali Khan. So have you make some distinction there as well? Do you think that this was the case, or do you think that no, it was just a political move and this had nothing to do with the...
You see, the stronghold of the Muslim League had always been the UP province,
Yes.
first of all. This movement got planted in Punjab and rest only in 1937 onwards. So the Muslim League idea of opposing the Congress on all counts was basically based in the UP. And when Pakistan was created, initially the government was predominantly that of the Urdu-speaking people.
Yes.
But over time that has changed. And as a result, in the end, the same Muhajirs have been at the receiving end, and the MQM came up and we know what happened. But this is true. First of all, outside Punjab, the Nehru government assured that Muslims were not attacked. There were some attacks here and there, but the state intervened and smashed them. So if the attacks really took place, they were in East Punjab and West Punjab.
Right.
My estimate is that at least 800,000 Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs were killed, of which 500,000 were Muslims of East Punjab and 300,000 were Hindus and Sikhs of West Punjab.
Right.
The reason is the slaughter of Muslims on a larger scale was possible in the princely states like Patiala and all, where the officialdom was not connected, whereas in the rest of Punjab, the police officers, the deputy commissioners, they had all served together. So there was a restraining hand.
Yeah.
But in the princely states, nothing of the sort took place. So there was a slaughter. And let me put on record that in Bahawalpur, the Nawab Sahib ensured that the Hindus and Sikhs were not attacked, and he instructed that they should be enabled to live freely. So we can be proud of how Bahawalpur treated a princely state at that time, the Hindu and Sikh minorities.
Right. So thank you, Dr. Saab. I hope that many people would have learned a lot about the partition, and it would have sort of implored them to learn more about it, and your book is there. and it can be ordered online as well. So you can always, I got one copy for myself as well. So you must read this book, and you must read other books by Dr. Ishtiyaq Ahmed Saab. He was kind enough to give us his time today for New Wave History and Yador Media. So we thank him again. And Dr. Saab, thank you very much for coming here again. There is this instruction that I would like to give you, that you must comment and you must like the video if you like it, and share it with your friends and people who might be interested. Thank you for tuning into New Wave History, and stay tuned with us.